Hey everyone, I'm Crist, Cloud Ecosystem Architect here at Elastic. I'm really excited to introduce this demo from my colleague 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀 today. Before we jump in, I want to set some context because what you're about to see sits at the intersection of two things that are moving incredibly fast right now: the Microsoft AI ecosystem and Elastic's ability to bring your own data into the AI conversation. If you've been following what Microsoft's been building with Azure OpenAI and Foundry IQ, you know that developers now have a genuinely powerful, integrated environment for discovering, evaluating, and deploying large language models. That's a big deal, but a model without the right context, without the right data, is just a very expensive autocomplete, and that's where Elastic comes in. Elastic is natively available on the Azure Marketplace. Deployed, managed, and built through your Microsoft Marketplace means you can go from zero to production-grade AI search deployment without leaving the Azure ecosystem, without a separate procurement motion, and without managing additional vendor relationships. It's Elastic on Azure the way Azure customers expect things to work. When you pair Elastic with the models you're already exploring in Microsoft Foundry model catalog, whether it's Azure OpenAI or other models from the broader catalog, you get something very compelling: grounded, relevant, trustworthy AI answers that are powered by your data and not just the model's training data. Which brings me to what Jonathan's going to show you today. In his demo, you'll see how Elastic's Agent Builder lets you take a traditional e-commerce search experience and transform it into a conversational AI agent, one that understands your product catalog, speaks your customer's language, and delivers results that actually drive conversation. No full application rebuild required. He'll walk through how to connect an LLM, wire in your own data, and deploy an agent that's ready for your e-commerce site. It's a practical look at what's possible when you combine the best of Microsoft's AI platform with Elastic's context engineering and search retrieval capabilities. All right, over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Engineer at Elastic. And today I'm going to show you how you can use Elastic Agent Builder and workflows to create an AI search experience. The agenda for this webinar is that I'll start with a quick overview of the Elastic solutions that are available, and then I'll introduce Agent Builder, and then we'll jump right into a demo where I'll show you an e-commerce website for a fictitious company called 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗸𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗧 Supply Company, and then we'll look at Elastic Agent Builder. I'll give you an overview of that. We will use Agent Builder to create a workflow. We'll create an MCP tool, and we'll create an agent, and then we'll integrate that agent that we created back into the Wayfinder web app. And then we'll conclude with a walkthrough of the architecture that the Wayfinder web app is created with. Okay, Elastic has three solutions: search, observability, and security. Elasticsearch allows you to bring any data into the Elasticsearch platform, and it gives you blazing fast lexical exact match search, semantic search based on vectors, and now agentic search, powered by AI agents created with Elastic Agent Builder. Elastic Observability is if you need observability into the applications that you're running. So if you need application performance monitoring, metrics, and more, all you have to do is bring your logs into Elastic, and we'll use AI to parse and partition those logs into a structured format that will allow you to see instantly exactly what's going on in your applications. Elastic Security, if you've been tasked with protecting systems or monitoring endpoints or even running a security operations center, Elastic Security has features like attack discovery, automatic remediation with workflows that will enable you to stay ahead of the modern cybersecurity threats that are ever present. Now, to get started with Elastic, Azure is a great place to do that. All you have to do is log into Azure, go to the Microsoft Marketplace, and search for Elastic Serverless. And you'll see the three solutions pop up. Then all you have to do is click Get It Now, and that will create a full-featured Elastic project that you can get started with. And now I'm proud to announce Elastic Agent Builder. It's been available in technical preview for a while now, but it is officially generally available, so you can use it for your production workloads. Now, the best way to explain how Elastic Agent Builder works is to show you. So let me do that right now with a demo. All right, so this is an e-commerce website that sells camping gear for a company called Wayfinder. Now, all of the products, the descriptions, the titles that you'll see, we created with generative AI. And the search for this website is powered by Elastic. So let's check it out. We can browse gear, and you can click an item, see its images, see its details, its title. You can add it to cart, all the things that you'd expect with an e-commerce website. And there's also search. So let's check that out. You can see we've got chat-based search, we've got hybrid search, we've got lexical search. So let's go ahead and try a query. What if I type jackets? And there we go. We get a nice list of jackets to choose from. But what if I were to type coats? No results. And that's because none of the products have the word coat or coats in their title or their descriptions. What if I try hybrid search? And there we go. We get jackets again. And that's because we have run the titles and descriptions through the Elastic Inference Service to create vectors and store those in a vector database. And so that hybrid search knows that coats are similar to jackets, and we get similar results that we saw before for lexical search. Now, suppose we wanted to get more sophisticated, and we wanted to actually create a trip planner that was powered by AI, that you could ask a question like this: plan a 3-day backpacking trip to Yosemite next weekend. Let's run that. And trip planner agent is not built yet. Well, that's okay. We can fix that. Let's go build an agent to power the trip planner. We can do that in Elastic Agent Builder. Okay, so here is Elastic, and this is the Elastic Agent Builder interface. The first thing that you should notice is that we already have an agent that's enabled, and we have an LLM that the agent can use. Now, this is configured right out of the box. You don't have to do anything. As soon as you install Elastic, this is available. The other cool thing here to note is that if I click this LLM, currently it's Anthropic, but you can see there's a whole bunch of other LLMs that are pre-configured by default. Now, suppose there was an LLM you wanted to use that wasn't included in this list. Well, Agent Builder has a solution for that too. We can click Manage, and you can see all the pre-configured LLMs here. And then I can click Create Connector. We can search for Azure. You can select Azure. And now we need a place that we can find LLMs, deploy LLMs, and run LLMs. Well, it turns out that there's a great place to do that right in Azure. So I'm going to jump over to that right now. This is the Microsoft Foundry running in Azure. You can see we don't have any models deployed. So let's go deploy one. I'll click Deploy Base Model. And you can see there's a ton of different models to choose from. Let's try Mistral. I'll select the Mistral Large. And let's go ahead and deploy that. We can use the default settings. There we go. That was pretty fast. We'll jump over to details. I'll select the target URI. We'll go back to the connector settings here, and I'll plug in that URI I just copied. Go back to the Foundry and grab the key. And enter the API key for authentication. And then we'll give this connector a name. We'll say Mistral Large 3. And then we'll click Save and Test. That's saved the settings. And then now we have a nice interface to actually test it out with a Hello World prompt. So we'll run that. And there we go. The test was successful. So now when we go back to Agent Builder and we click the LLM selector, we now see we've got Mistral Large 3. So right out of the box, Agent Builder is a great place for you to try out agents with LLMs and your own data. Okay, so now let's get on with building an agent for the trip planner for that Wayfinder supply company web app that you saw earlier. The first thing we're going to need is a workflow. So I'll click Workflows. You can see there's a few there already, but we'll create a new one. And now I'm going to jump over to Visual Studio Code to copy a workflow that I've got saved here. Copy that. Go back to the workflow and paste that in. And let's quickly walk through the elements here in this workflow. So you can see there's a version, it's got a name, get customer profile. There's an input. It takes a user ID input, that's a string. And this workflow is triggered manually. There's a couple other ways that workflows can be triggered. And workflows have one or more steps. This one has a single step. It's called call CRM MCP. And this is basically doing an HTTP post call to an external MCP server to get the customer profile. Another cool thing about workflows is that each step can have an on failure handler. And in this case, if there's a failure, you can see that we'll retry twice and that you can add delays too. Here's a 1 second delay between the retry attempts. And then finally, workflows have the ability to log their output. And so in this case, we're doing a log to profile and log profile to the console. And so that should take the results that we get from running this workflow and create a log for it. So let's go ahead and save that. And we'll run it. And so you can see we get this input for the user ID, and we have the option to enter a value for that. So for this, I'll type user member. I'll run it. And there we go, successful. You can see the details of the response that came back. And here's that log profile output that I talked about earlier. If I click that, we can see in a nice readable format, we got a customer called 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗃. You can see his loyalty tier, lifetime purchases, and his lifetime value and his purchase history. Cool. So our workflow is working. Great. All right. So now let's go and create a tool that uses that workflow. I'll go back to Agent Builder, click the More menu, click View All Tools, click New Tool. And here we can see there are different tool types. There's an ESQL tool type, which is Elasticsearch Query Language, which is similar to SQL, but even more powerful. There is an index search tool type. So if you want to just do a straight search against an Elastic index, there's a workflow tool type, which is what we'll be using. And there's an MCP tool type, which is currently in tech preview, but that allows you to chain tools together to create a complex workflow. So I'm going to go back to workflow, and then we'll select the workflow that we just created, the Get Customer Profile workflow. And then we'll give this a tool ID. I'll jump back over to Visual Studio Code, copy this tool ID. We'll call it Tool Workflow Get Customer Profile. Go back and copy the description. And that's all we need. I'll go ahead and click. Save and test. So that saved the details, and then it opens this testing flyout. Because it's using that workflow that took a input of user ID, this tool that uses that workflow also needs the input. And so I'm going to type the same thing I did before, user member, click submit. And there we go, successful response. And if we look at the output, it should be similar to what we saw before. And there he is, 𝗦𝗽𝗃𝗃, same customer, the loyalty tier, lifetime value, and the purchase history. Sweet. Okay, so now we've got a tool that's using the workflow. So let's go ahead and create an agent that will use that same tool. One final thing I'll note about any tool that you create in Agent Builder, it's officially an MCP tool. So with an API key, you can access that tool from any other application that you're building. Great. Okay, so we'll go to Agents. I'll click More, View All Agents. And we're going to create a new agent. I've got Visual Studio ready with some values here that I can copy. So I'm going to copy this agent ID. We'll call this the trip planner agent. We're going to copy these custom instructions. Now, this is a markdown that specifies exactly how you want the agent to behave. In our case, we're telling it to search the product catalog, to generate a trip plan, and the areas that it should be searching in for trip plans, and additional details. Other items that we need are a display name. So I'll copy that. We'll call this the trip planner agent. Need a description. And that's all the details we need for our agent. The final thing that we need to do, though, is to assign it some tools. And so I will go ahead and click the Tools tab here, and then we'll sort by ID. And there is the tool that we just created, the Tool Workflow Get Customer Profile tool. So I'll enable that, and I will also enable these 3 tools. Great. Now I'll click Save and Chat. And so here we are back in the Agent Builder interface, and notice that now the agent that's selected is the Trip Planner agent that we just created, so that we can quickly test it out. If you wanted to go back to a different agent, you can simply click that, and then you got your options for different agents. So let's go ahead and test this. I've got a prompt that we can test it with right here. We can say, plan a 3-day backpacking trip to Yosemite this weekend. And we'll run that. And one of the cool things about Agent Builder is that it gives you a summary of what it's thinking and reasoning about as it responds to your prompt. You can also expand this section to see the exact steps that it's taking as it does its reasoning. So you can see that it is planning a trip. It knows that this weekend is March 13th through the 15th. It's getting the weather conditions for that and the road alerts. It ran an ESQL query to get information about the user's past click stream. Now it's searching for waterproof tents here, looking for rain jackets, getting more details about the tent, looking for sleeping bags that are suitable for the temperatures that are expected this weekend. Getting more details about the sleeping bag. And there we go, voila. We've got a backpacking trip itinerary to Yosemite for this weekend. You can see it's got a trip overview, it's got weather conditions, it's got product recommendations that are suitable for the conditions of the trip timing, and it's got a suggested 3-day itinerary. Sweet. So we have an agent that we can now go and integrate back with the Wayfinder web app so that we can get that trip planner button working as it should be. There's one final thing, though, that I wanted to show you, and that's the fact that any agent that you build with Elastic Agent Builder, its operations are also accessible via API. So it's cool that we can come in here into Agent Builder and chat with it using this interface, but even cooler is all of these functions are accessible via API. So if you want to integrate that into your existing apps, it's easy to do. And so, for example, I can propose a query like this. Now, I could go look at the documentation for the APIs for agents, and I encourage you to do that. But I wanted to show you how you can also just ask a question like this. Hey, generate an example Python API call to the Trip Planner agent with the prompt that we ran before. And so I'm showing you this because I want you to understand that you can work with the agent to help you generate example code that will then help you get started with integrating the agent into your existing apps. And here we go. Let me zoom in on this a bit. Very simple Python. It imports a request library. It's got the URL to get to the agent. It shows you that you're going to need an API key. Here's the prompt that we ran. It does the query and prints out the response. Sweet. All right, so now we have everything that we need to integrate this agent back into the Wayfinder web app. So let's go take a look at that. I'm going to refresh. Sweet. Okay, so let's give it a try. Now, the way this app is written is such that if the trip planner agent is available, it will work as expected. If it's not, you'll see the error message that we saw before that it's not yet implemented. But because we just created the trip planner agent, this should work. Let's try it out. We click trip planner. We'll click the suggested prompt here. We'll say this weekend and run it. All right, looks like it's working. Now, similar to the Elastic Agent Builder UI, this also shows the reasoning. So we can expand this section and we can see that it's planning a trip for Yosemite for this weekend. It's getting the customer profile. Looking for waterproof rain gear based on the temperature that are expected this weekend. Looking for sleeping bags that are suitable for the temperatures expected this weekend. Searching for backpacks. Searching for tents. All right. There we go. That looks great. Sweet. So similar to what we saw before inside of Agent Builder, now you can see it integrated right into this web app. So we've got our 3-day Yosemite backpacking trip plan for this weekend. You see the weather conditions, we got recommended gear, and look over here in this pane, you can see all the gear that it's recommended with easy buttons to add it to your shopping cart if you want to add that. And then we also have a way to view the itinerary, which you can print out and bring with you on the trip. So that's pretty cool. We went from an e-commerce site that had chat, hybrid, and lexical search to using Agent Builder to build an agent that powered a concierge type trip planner with product recommendations using Agent Builder and tied to an LLM that's running on Microsoft Foundry. Super powerful. And let's do a quick tour of the architecture that powers the Wayfinder web app. So starting at the top here, you can see the front end is written in React. So a user submits a query like plan my trip to Yosemite. That sends an HTTP request to the backend, which is written in Python running fast API server. That Python backend does an API query to the Elastic Stack running the trip planner agent that we just created. And you can see that the agent builder agent has access to the 4 tools that we gave it. And starting over here on this side, you can see the agent builder has a tool called product search that does semantic search against the product catalog. It also has a tool called get user affinity, which does an ESQL query to the user's clickstream. Additionally, it has a tool called check trip safety, and that goes through a workflow that does an HTTP post to an MCP server to get weather information. And finally, the tool that we created, Get Customer Profile, goes through a workflow called Get Customer Profile that does an HTTP post to an external MCP server that queries a CRM service. And all of that creates the trip planner that you just saw. And hopefully, I've enticed you to check out Elastic and Elastic Agent Builder. And here are some resources to help you get started. The first one is the Agent Builder documentation. And the next link here is a link to the GitHub repo where you can find all the code you need to run the Wayfinder Supply web app on your own machine. It's also got a great README to explain exactly how everything works and to help you get started. Additionally, it's got a link to a workshop that you can run completely for free without installing anything to try it out yourself. And finally, here's a QR code that you can scan so that you can get Elastic running on Azure free for 7 days. So go ahead, give it a try.
Thanks, Jonathan. That was a great practical walkthrough of how to build an agent using Elastic as well as the Microsoft Foundry environment. If you'd like to learn more, please come visit Elastic at the Microsoft Build Conference 2026 and use this QR code to learn more. Thanks very much for your time today.